see you come out today. We just wanted to get some folks together, and we felt it was high time, Michael and I, to do another one of these sessions. We really wanted to do like a two-part thing. First, just talk about some of our experiences over the past year with live streaming, recording, things that people have done, how they've maybe upgraded their systems and troubleshooting, and just kind of where they are a year later. I mean, I can say from person to look at upgrading how we were doing it in the church, and it kind of started this long journey of errors and problem solving and trying to get stuff to work properly. So actually, it was really great. I mean, the best way I learn is by, screwing things up, and then you really figure things out when you step in all the problems that you can run into. So that was the first kind of thing we wanted to just say, where were people at a year later and their experience, and what have they learned and what have they changed? And then Michael, if you want to take it over and for the second part of our discussion.
And so the other, you can all hear me all right, or am I?
Yep.
Okay. Is the second part of this is kind of a missional piece in the conversation that I think we need to stay on top of, and that is, where do we go from here in terms of online presence and ministry against the backdrop of beginning to return to whatever normal is going to be. And, I think it's important for us to have strategies around how and what we might do with our online presence once we are able to be present in our church buildings again. And are those two things inclusive, exclusive, done differently, appeal to a different crowd? How do we measure that and consider that? But I think, for me, it would be a shame to have done as much as we've done in this area of ministry that we had not ventured into till this past year and a half, to lose ground there because the energy shifts somehow, and we lose that either the drive to do it, or we just get distracted by other things that we just don't give it the time it needs. So as we move out of COVID, it might be helpful to share thoughts around what we see the missional opportunities being, and share thoughts and ideas, strategies around how we can carry this new knowledge with us into whatever is coming in the next few months. So that's the part I kind of want to weigh into together today as well. So the technology, but also the missional imperative that we might carry with us into the future. So I think those are kind of the two parts of the piece. And my friend Rob Castle is here. If you don't all know Rob, Rob's a member of our parish here, but he's also the guy that's at the other end of the camera when we're doing live and hybrid worship. So he's come in to be a part of the conversation, and between two sets of ears, we might remember stuff and take a hold of that. So that's where it's at. So I'll let Mark kind of drive the technology conversation, and I'm happy to help drive the missional one, because I think they're both equally important. But Mark's more the techie guy than I am, and so I think we saw the first part of it maybe being a bit of a show and tell of the things that we've tried, things that have worked, maybe things that haven't, new learnings over the last. I think our last one of these was about a year ago, or close to it. What new things have we learned in that time, and opportunities that might be there? So maybe it's just a show and tell, the thing that we have discovered that is most meaningful or helpful, and just a general conversation. But Mark, I'll let you kind of pick up that part of the conversation, and from your standpoint, like what's happening in the diocese too, Mark, because everything that you've been doing is all online too. So you may have found things in that process, and the meetings and other things that we've been doing. Is what have you discovered over the last year and a bit of technical online life from the diocese point of view too? So it might be, maybe you could start and tell us where you're at and what you've discovered and things, challenges you've found, and then we can all weigh in.
Okay, thanks, Michael. be honest, I think I've learned a heck of a lot more working in the parish level than I have in the diocesan level. Just to be honest with you. Yeah, so I mean, because diocesan level, it's been mainly teams meetings and go to meetings and that. Not too much live streaming, right? Obviously, because of what's been going on. Other than me recording a service for the bishop, I really learned a lot just from the parish level. My mic is on, right? Yeah, okay. I couldn't hear anything there for a second. Yeah, I mean, I really learned a lot when I started diving into what we were doing. Parish, we were doing something. It was quite simple. Afternoon, Ian. It was quite simple. Ian, we're just sort of starting a quick chat about. We're kind of doing this in a twofold piece where we're talking about sort of what we've learned over the last year, tech-wise, and what people are doing, how they've changed things. And then we're also Michael Reed's going to sort of lead a talk on kind of the missional piece of going forward with all this. So I'm just kind of opening up with just a little synopsis of what I've been doing over the last year. Great. So I was saying that we had a pretty basic setup at St. Mary Magdalene. Initially, our warden had set it all up and was doing it.
The other St. Mary Magdalene, you mean?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Just saying.
Maybe we have to have like a dot something behind it. .1, .2, or .A, .B. I don't know. So yeah, St. Mary Magdalene, Napanee. And so I initially I looked at our setup, and it was quite basic. It was basically a laptop and a webcam. And it worked out okay, but the sound was horrible. And video quality was not so great either. And we had a lot of people complaining, parishioners, tuning in on Sunday, complaining that it just, compared to what they saw at other churches, if they had cared to check around, it just wasn't doing well. So then Richard asked if I could dive into it, Richard Hettke, and just see what I could do. So that was my first mistake, is I'll just buy a whole bunch of gear and plug it in and everything will work just great. But no, it turned into like this 2-month odyssey of just trying to get stuff to work properly. Because I set it up and this is my first mistake, is I started to run 3 webcams into one unit. I bought one of these.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't a laptop. It was a NUC, an Intel NUC, which is just a processor and a video card and sound card in it. You had to plug a keyboard and a monitor into. But I discovered that multiple USB devices don't like to kind of all go into the same port. I had all these splitters, couldn't get that to work. So I really ran into some troubleshooting issues there until I got it figured out. And then Ian, you and I were going back and forth because I was running into so many sound problems with bad quality sound, and so then I had to figure that one out. And then finally, with your advice around getting a Scarlett 4i4 device to run out of the soundboard, and then I was able to. I learned about balanced cables and unbalanced cables, why you can't run a unbalanced cable more than 10 feet. I had like a 25-foot run on this. Now it's great. Now I'm into other things like, okay, well, see, what I'm realizing is every time, of course, you reach a certain tech level, then there's some other thing that pops up that now is not so good, right? So then parishioners, and I get all the emails, parishioners saying, well, I can't hear the piano clearly, or I can't hear the organ clearly. So no matter what level I reach, there's another piece of the mountain to climb up and improve that section. So now I'm trying to get our digital organ run into our soundboard so that then I can feed that into the stream directly and control that, as opposed to just getting it picked up ambiently in the room through the open mics, which was the only way I could make it work before. And after I get that sorted out, then I've got to get the piano mic'd and buy a mic and then mic the piano, because then it's just kind of in the background. You can't quite hear it clearly. So it's like an ongoing process for me as each time I hit a new level, and then suddenly I find a new thing that needs to be dealt with. I figure it'll probably take me a few more. I don't have a ton of time to work on it, but I mean, it'll take me a few more months then, and raising more money than to keep acquiring pieces. It's like,
so Mark, are you still using OBS as your?
I stopped OBS because I was finding that it would forget my settings. So I would open it up a week later and it would forget my cameras or some strange thing. So then I turned to a software called Streamlabs OBS, which apparently uses less processing power too than OBS. And it works great. It's a similar kind of layout. So, it's the same kind of thing. Like, it's like one car versus another car. It's got a steering wheel and a gas pedal. I mean, it's not that hard to figure out. It's just laid out differently, but it doesn't forget my settings. It doesn't forget the cameras. I don't have to worry about if I open this up on Sunday morning, is everything going to be there the way I set it up last week?
OBS is an imperfect tool in a bunch of ways. I'm curious if I'll just toss a question in here now in case anyone knows. So we bought a video camera, and so we have its HDMI cable runs into a video capture device that then plugs it through USB into the laptop. That's how I get my video feed in. Now, I've bought a relatively cheap video capture card, $25 or so. You can spend $1,000 on these suckers, and they may be worth it. I have no idea. I've read a little bit about this stuff. I'm not sure, but I'm fairly sure that the challenge I have with my card is a function just of the fact it's a cheap one. The challenge I have is latency. The video comes into my laptop about a quarter second behind my audio. Interestingly, in a way, at the moment, that's not terribly important. As long as we're all masked, you can't see that the lips don't match down.
I have noticed that too.
or I should say, it wouldn't matter. Now, OBS has a feature which, particularly if you're only using one camera, or if you're using multiple cameras, but they all have the same latency, then it actually addresses the issue. You can go into advanced settings and put in a delay on your audio inputs if you need to. And so I delay my audio by 250 microseconds, and that's perfect. And I did some testing to figure out exactly what the latency was so I could find that number, and got there. So two semi-related questions. The Streamlab, is that what you called it? Streamlab OBS?
Streamlabs, yeah.
So does it have that same function? Do you know? Would you know?
I think it does, Charles. I haven't dove too far into that just because I haven't had any problems with it. But
I would imagine it seems to me to be a pretty straightforward thing that you'd want. Yeah. Does anybody have a not crazy expensive video card solution that does not have such noticeable latency?
I have picked up the Elgato Camlink 4K.
Okay.
For use with my mirrorless camera. I got a Sony A6400, which is probably more overpriced than I can really handle at this point. But anyways, and it has far more problems actually with live streaming, to the point where we haven't managed to live stream an entire service with it yet.
The camera or the Elgato device? Okay.
But it has to do with me having to learn the camera. But the Camlink, I have used it with both my Sony A6400 mirrorless camera and with my old Nikon D5100 camera. And it works equally well with both. I haven't noticed the latency problem, but I have read that if you have a Mac or with any other computer, it's possible too that just getting a setting in OBS that allows you to correct for latency doesn't necessarily fix it through a whole live stream of, say, 40 minutes, an hour in length, because in some cases, and I was reading it in the case of the Mac, on a Mac, the delay is not just a steady amount. It increases the longer the delay increases the longer the service goes on. So what was correct at the beginning of the service as a delay correction will no longer be helpful at the end of the service.
Multiply bizarre.
I've noticed this in a lot of things that I've watched on TV recently, because I've done all this reading about how stuff works and doesn't work. I've noticed that almost every commercial on TV these days,
a bunch of things not sync.
People's mouths are out of sync with what with what they're saying, and more so towards the end of the commercial, they seem to be speaking right in synchronization at the beginning, but by the end of the commercial, 2 minutes in, they're not in sync anymore.
Your Elgato device, as far as you can tell, it doesn't generate any latency that you can see?
I can't say. I think very little.
I haven't noticed that problem. I've noticed other problems that I've had, but I haven't noticed that particular problem.
Yeah, we've been using the same one, the CamLink 4K, since we got into this, and we've never had any real problems with it in terms of the quality of transmission of the video. So, and if you connect, I've found that if you connect your audio through the camera with the signal, rather than use separate stuff that goes in, then you solve the problem with the latency anyway.
I don't have that option for my audio is coming out of my soundboard. I have a USB output to bring my audio in.
Okay.
So I can't run it through the camera.
We do have the option here. So what I found was, once we moved toward using the camera's microphone jack and attached our wireless system into that it's all one piece that's going into the computer.
No, that's a whole nother solution, which obviously would work, because if there's going to be delays, the delays will all be synchronized.
Yeah.
Won't matter. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. That your Elgato device, it was about $150 or so. Is that the one?
170.
Yeah. Okay. I actually bought one of those, and I guess I got a dud. I was gonna try it, and
a certain percentage of them are duds.
Exactly. Send it back.
Yeah,
so I need to buy another one.
I was talking to Noel.
See if I was getting the right thing before I went and bought another one.
Yeah, Noel told me the same thing. Noel Henry, he said he bought the Elgato, and I was looking at them today because I was going to pick up a couple, but he said same thing. He got one, worked great until it didn't.
Yeah.
Mine didn't work out of the box. Mine just straight out the box didn't work. So.
Yeah, a certain percentage of them don't work right out of the box, and then others work well for a year, and then they conk out.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
But
we're getting close to.
Surprise me. I think you always. That's a basic rule. You always have to have two. You need a backup, because otherwise you're going to get stuck on short notice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Blair, do you use those cam links at all, or is your stuff is just running straight into your computer? Or
our stuff just runs straight in, because we have specifically web-based cameras.
Okay.
For the system that are, So it just runs right in, and all of our mics run into our soundboard, the piano, everything is all in the same system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you guys have been doing this longer than anybody, I'm sure, because you were well advanced into this before we even hit COVID.
Yeah, I think this is 11 or 12 years now.
Wow.
Have you guys done, you've got a setup that just works and that's the way it's been? Or I know you've changed added cameras,
We've added quite a lot over this last year, just because we had the chance, and some of the equipment was getting old as well. So we bought another one of those web-based cameras that are hardwired into the building, and they're all remote. So they zoom and pan and move all over the place on their own and have settings. We've added so now Ray, who is our technician, who would know a whole lot more about this than I do, but he's on his boat right now, so he can't come in. But he's added his cell phone as well, so he can do a mobile camera now. So like every morning we ring the bell outside, he can walk outside with that and show things. And we've added video in, so people at home can live stream in reading a reading.
Okay.
What's your software that's putting this out? Are you OBS or something else?
No, it's something else. I've been trying to remember the name of it, and I, for the life of me, can't do it. It's quite expensive.
It was Wirecast, wasn't it?
Wirecast, that's it.
Yeah, I remember him showing it to me.
What do you call quite expensive? Multiple thousands or multiple hundreds?
Multiple hundreds, yeah.
Okay, that's not so bad.
I think
hundreds is manageable usually.
Yeah, exactly. And they have good, what do you call it? Service when you phone in, right? So we pay every year. It's a membership thing, and it's under 500, I think. But we do a lot with it, and it can do a whole lot more than we do with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet.
What kind of cameras do you use? Is there a particular brand that you've found that you like there, Blair, or for the web-based cameras?
Once again, Ray would know, so I can't remember. I've looked up equivalent new ones. So what we did is we bought one, I think it was about 7 years ago. And now all of them are completely wireless. These ones are still wired in. So you'll see those ones, they look like a little round thing, and they have the camera comes up and it can pan around. It's two of those that we use. I can't remember the names for them. Sorry. I can get Ray to send in all that information for you if people want to know.
Is that a PTZ type of camera?
It is that type of camera, yes.
Sort of goes like that.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yes, exactly.
And those aren't cheap either.
With my hand.
No, we got a really good deal on them because they were outdated technology to a degree, and we paid I think $500 a camera.
Well, that's not bad.
But to get a newer version of them, they're about $1,200 to $1,300.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we were looking at getting another, and I went, ooh, they've gone up a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the folks in Bancroft got one of those, and I remember Russ was telling me it was around $1,200 or $1,300.
I mean, they are great in that we can, both of the cameras are at the back of the church, and we can zoom right in on the front of the church and pan around the room and up and down and all over the place.
That's what I think you need to expect to spend on a camera that's going to give you decent zoom from that distance. Mm-hmm. For a bunch of reasons, we didn't go in that direction, but we bought a video camera, and it was about $1,300. And the primary requirement was that it had a good lens, good zoom. I don't want to be elsewhere in the church. This thing needs to be parked at the back of the church where it's out of the way, but still be able to get to wherever it needs to get, and it does.
The advantage of these two cameras is they're on the wall. So we've got them on shelves, and both of them are 7 feet in the air. Yeah. So they're never in front, right? You don't trip over them. They're not in the way. They're not seen by anybody when they come in person services.
Good.
And the fact that they're wireless is...
Well, they're wireless now.
Okay.
These ones are the older version, so they're USB connectors.
Okay, I see.
So you just have long USB cables from those cameras to your computer. And the computer's at the back around your soundboard, I suppose?
Yes. Yeah, so we have a system in the back of the soundboard and two separate computers, one to run Easy Worship and one which is a full gaming PC, so it's got the really high processor that runs the actual live stream.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got a couple of gaming PCs as well.
And that's what we use as well.
We had some of the latency issues that you were talking about with the audio. With Wirecast, you can actually adjust, but you can adjust on the fly as well. So the operator listens to the service as they go, and if the latency changes, they can adjust on the fly.
Oh, that's good.
Okay.
That needs pretty sophisticated operator management, though, doesn't it?
Yeah, we only have, and that can be part of the issue, right? We have 3 trained people who can do it, but it is a steep learning curve.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the last 14 months has sure taught us that reality for sure.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
But we've had ours pretty consistent over the last many months, and I have a little Panasonic video camera that we've used from the very beginning. It produces HD quality picture, etc. And so we've been really happy with that. What we've been finding is more the shift into what else could we be doing in terms of the production. And so the two things that we have added in the last short while include this. And because we're on a VoIP phone system here at the church, we were able to add a conference phone line to that. And so what we discovered was that this conference phone is Bluetooth. And so it is now, I'm using it as my audio for this call here. Now, our conference line is extension 10. If somebody were to phone in that didn't have the video option, they can phone in and they would be a part of the conversation without any disruption at all. It's all one audio room. So that now for meetings and things like that, where the cost of having somebody on a landline phone in for the outreach meeting and get a $75 bill from Bell down the road, they just phone our conference line, which costs us $30 a month or something like that. And they can join services on Wednesday, our Wednesday service. People phone in and we can all share in the worship together. And this is the audio for the Zoom and for the telephone, and it all blends it all together. So that was a big piece. Along with that, in discovering this, we also found out with our phone system, we had the option of adding an audio line where we can upload the service, an audio file of the service. So again, for people who can't get on YouTube or some other platform online, they can pick up their mobile telephone and phone in. And, you know, if you're calling for the Sunday service, please press 1 now. And you press 1 now and it plays you the whole Sunday service on the telephone as well. Because our big problem after we felt comfortable enough patting ourselves on the back that we'd done something at least online was, what about all the people that can't do that? And so that's been a big addition to our ability to include more people. The next part's going to be trying to do a hybrid model of hybrid worship. And that is some in-person, doing YouTube, but also wanting to include Zoom with that. And one of the things I discovered with OBS, regardless of some of the glitches it may have, and other programs may have this, is a virtual camera. So I can use my single camera to produce 2 video feeds into 2 platforms on the same computer. So when I open up OBS, I start the virtual camera, I open up Zoom, I use the virtual camera in Zoom for the Zoom call, but it's all running through the same thing. So the camera for OBS is my Panasonic, but it is transmitting an extra signal for Zoom that is a virtual camera. So we can have people participating and still be recording live onto YouTube the content of the service, but include people on Zoom as well as in the live in church. So that's the thing that Rob and I are working on right now. We're not really doing live stuff until August, but we're preparing to be able to provide that broad experience of worship. So, and then you could have somebody as a reader from the Zoom call participating in the service, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So it provides us with that.
Michael, can I get you to just quickly say that again? So is it the OBS virtual camera that's feeding into the Zoom? Is that what you just said? And
Yes.
that OBS virtual camera is essentially whatever the OBS output is they're going out to, it becomes an input into the Zoom?
Yep. So my camera that's in front of me now would be the virtual camera for Zoom, but it's also the camera for the OBS YouTube feed as well. So you don't have to have, you know, multiple cameras hooked in doing 2 different platforms. Right. You can have everything running at the same time.
Is Zoom seeing the camera directly, or is it seeing, like in my OBS, I put together a few things that goes out to YouTube. Is Zoom seeing that, or is it just seeing the camera?
It is seeing what's on the camera. Only
the camera?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's not what I thought you were saying.
No, it's isolated. The camera itself is isolated. So it's basically going through OBS as the main video feed, but we're translating that same video feed over to Zoom as a virtual camera. But it's the same video feed that is doing both.
Okay. Because I mix PowerPoint and my camera in OBS, and that's what's going out to YouTube. So it'd be interesting if that same output could go into what the Zoom people would see if you wanted to try and have them hook in. Is there a way to do that? Do you know?
I don't know, because we're not using PowerPoint or anything with our production here. So that might be a little bit of playing around to figure. I would figure if it's feeding in some format already, that you should be able to make those connections, but I wouldn't know how to do it, because that's not what we're doing here.
You've given me a new idea to play with. This hadn't occurred to me. So we'll see.
So, but for us, the audio piece with the telephone is by far the more significant for us.
Okay.
And you know, if I had to do it having two cameras feeding into the computer and one going to Zoom and one going to YouTube through OBS, it wouldn't make any difference to us, ultimately. So that's a nice to have if you can just keep it to one camera and it's simpler. But the audio through the telephone really has been a huge addition to not just the worshiping life, but the learning and social and administrative life of the parish. And what was really surprised me was it wasn't a big cost. So we have a jack for this in every room in the building. So if we're doing a meeting in the hall, if we have phone and people there, I just plug it in the hall and off we go. They phone into extension 10 and they're part of the parish council meeting. So anywhere I can go in the building now, I can set up for this. We don't take our Sunday setup anywhere else though. Like the camera and everything that we use for worship for Sundays, we just don't mess with that. I think for part of the reason that Mark found with his setup is that you have to kind of reset it all back up again. If you take it apart and take it someplace else and then bring it back, it's not worth the anxiety of all that. And not to say that there's been any anxiety over the last 14 months to deal with. So I have a setup. I have a separate setup in Lynn at St. John's. So when we do services there, they have a separate camera set up, still using OBS, etc. And I have a camera set up in the parish hall that's its own webcam that I use there, so that I'm not having to deal with the stress of having to redo everything everywhere I go. And we learned that by tragic circumstances and things just kind of blowing up on us at some point, because we're trying to do too much with too little, I guess. And so anyway, we've kind of learned that. We've paid some good money for a couple other nice web cameras that work really well in their circumstances. The other thing is we found investing in good audio equipment. This is a Rode wireless mic. So we have 3 sets of these that we use in the different locations. And these really work well, produce a really good sound, and are I had it in my shirt earlier and you wouldn't even know I have it with me, when I'm using it. So it works really, really well. Has a good range. I think it's 125 feet range. So I don't generally walk around in my homilies that far. So having good audio equipment makes a huge difference as well. We got a set of these and we really like them so much that we bought a couple others because they work really well for us. The other company that makes a really good one starts with an S, and I'm not going to get it right now because, of course, we don't use it here. Sabintech, I think it's called Sabintech, and they make really, really good wireless microphones for this kind of environment as well. So, but what we were really amazed at was the ability for this. If we're doing music, the audio one doesn't really work very well for that, the telephone, because it has its built-in filters that just destroy the musical sound. We've also discovered too that I think it's since the pandemic began, Zoom has updated the quality of its audio. So now if you go to the original sound audio on Zoom and set the background quality in the audio settings, we did a service this morning for one of our local nursing homes. We were here and now we can play organ and singing and everything else. Whereas when we started this thing, Zoom, we had the same problems with Zoom, that even though we didn't have filters on the microphones, the built-in filters for, because Zoom is kind of set up to be a social vocal platform for talking, that it just destroyed everything we tried to do. So now we can eliminate that, and we don't use any filters on Zoom anymore, just because it works better without it. So I'm not using original sound today because you don't need it for something like this. But for the service this morning, you just click a little button at the top and it switches over, and the audio for music and stuff is brilliant. So we found some change. I think some changes have happened in some of the platforms we're using, but also some learnings that we've done over the last year that work for us. And of course, everybody's in a different circumstance, so it doesn't necessarily work. But certainly those are the things that we've discovered over the last little while that have really helped us to improve our ability to share beyond, in different platforms, so we can include more people in what we're doing.
Michael, how are you guys getting the organ audio online? Is it just the mics picking it up, or do you have it somehow running straight out of it? Like, is it?
We just use the microphones, and so we're just picking it up.
Okay.
But as I say, that comes with a price, because you always lose something that way.
Okay.
But we also have our organ now has been all re-gutted. So we actually have MIDI capability on this organ. So we probably could feed directly into the system. And I hadn't even thought of trying that. So you've given me an idea that I'm going to play with now following this, because we can move the organ all around the building, and we have an Ethernet cable, and we just plug it into the organ, and we could put the console over on the other side of the church and use it there if it suited us or whatever. So like everything else.
MIDI may not help you on that, Michael. If you take a MIDI output from your organ into something else, the sound that gets generated is not being generated by the organ. It's being generated by whatever device is receiving the MIDI commands and interpreting them.
Okay.
I discovered this because I have access to a piano organ that has a MIDI output, and I thought, great, I can record stuff off of this. Actually, not really. I can record MIDI commands, but I need the original organ piano to actually interpret them with quality.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay. Yeah.
I just put a microphone on the thing because my laptop is not going to generate anything like the sound quality that the original device will.
Oh, I see.
Oh, okay.
So I'll save you some time on that. We have a pipe organ, so there's nothing. And I mean, it did have a major refresh in 1974, I think it was, but it was originally installed in 1914 or 15, I guess. No, 14. Yeah. So I don't think they had MIDI then. Go figure.
Well, ours is a 1927 Cassavant pipe organ, and we've redone all the
You've done a new
electronics,
console
because we had the old knob and tube kind of electronics for it, and they were in terrible condition. So when we updated it, we brought it up to kind of the modern standard of the day, at least. And gosh, I thought I had such a great idea to be able just to steal the audio right out of the computer, out of the organ itself.
It won't sound anything like a pipe organ that way.
So ours, Michael, it's a new digital organ, only a couple years old. We had that put in. So yeah, I went poking around underneath it to think, is there some kind of out on this thing, output jacks? So there is MIDI, but then it gives me these RCA outputs. So I had to get RCA outputs into a digital box, a DI, and then run XLR out of that over to the soundboard, which I'm still kind of hooking up. So I haven't quite got to the point where I've got it up and running perfectly. But
if you want sound generated by that instrument, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
That's basically what we're running. So we have a digital baby grand that we play. It just sounds like an organ piano, whatever you're going to use. And it runs right through our soundboard and out through our system. So you get exactly what is, and without any delay. exactly what the music is on the broadcast.
Do you plug it directly into your audio interface or into the PA system?
It goes into our soundboard. So there's the same box that Mark talked about that you have to run the RCA cables through into that and then into the soundboard. So you can adjust and everything that.
Okay. So you're calling that a soundboard. I call it an audio interface.
Oh no, well we have that, but we have a full soundboard as well with all the
the sliders,
the sliders and everything as well.
Okay, so
if you're singing along with that, does that create latency things for you that the instrument is feeding directly into the system, but the choir and the singers are coming through the other audio? Does that create challenges there?
We haven't had that because we do not have the size of choir and everything that you do it. And actually through COVID, we haven't had anyone, but we had them mic'd as well. So the microphone that was in front of the choir, which is a special choir singing microphone, went in through the same soundboard. So it didn't have any difference of latency issues.
Okay.
And the lengths of cables would be, if they're approximately the same, you wouldn't probably have latency issues.
I wouldn't expect it on sound anyway. The latency issues that are typical in this environment are the video capture card does a whole lot of work. Mm-hmm. And the cheaper the card, the slower it's going to be to do that work. That's what's going to generate the latency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Two different audio things might be just slightly different from each other, but I would be very surprised if it would be within the range of human perception.
Yeah, so I'm interested to find out.
If there's one part that we've been disappointed about is that we haven't found anything that really we feel does a good job of the music part of our audio. That the microphones and computers, and you just loses something in translation as you do that. So like I'll listen to something and I'll say to Jeff, "Oh man, that sounds pretty good," and he said, "Well, I can't hear the 4-foot flute anymore. It's been lost in the translation." And he'll pull out a stop and he'll hear it when it begins, and then it'll just disappear into the kind of the muddy waters of the audio that for somebody like me still sounds wonderful, but for somebody like him, he hears what's not there. And so it becomes a challenge. So I just tell him not to listen so closely.
One way to solve it.
Challenge for me is going to be presuming we ever do get back to having choral singing again, we're going to keep on live streaming, and I'm pretty sure that the mics that I'm using now, they work great for everything we do, for live streaming, everything in the service, for a soloist. But I don't think it's going to be adequate for a choir. And so I'd be interested to know, Blair, what kind of mic you're using, because I think I'm going to need one of those once we have a choir back in order for the folks joining by live stream to be able to hear them properly.
And I would suggest probably more than one. So the mic we have is 4 singers, 4 multiple singers, but even with our small choir, when we were doing this before, we thought it really needed one at either end, so it didn't pick up half the choir stronger than the other. We haven't had a choir throughout COVID,
when you say a small choir, how small do you mean?
When we were running it, there would have been 6 to 8.
Okay. I don't know what we're going to have post-COVID, but going into COVID, we had 12 or 14. So yes, the same or more. So 2 of them. Do you have that information? What you're using?
I don't, but I could get it for you.
Could you maybe get to Mark and he could send it out? That's this is one of on the subject of what are we doing going forward. Yeah. I think this is one of the areas that we haven't really faced during COVID. That if folks haven't already addressed it the way you have, they're going to want to or need to in order to bring that part back into the fold, as it were.
Yep. Yeah, I'm going to have the same problem when the choir comes back, then it's like, how do I deal with that audio? How do I pick all that up and accurately?
Pretty much everything with a live stream is easier when there's no one else there.
Absolutely. An interesting blessing for us in all of this. Like we've always had a soloist sing a psalm, and they have always been reluctant to go anywhere near a microphone. Some of our choristers have very good voices, really can carry across the church. Others not so much. And even the ones who do, I got enough of my gang that are sort of hard of hearing. They rely on the PA system, and we have a hearing assist thing that takes the feed from the PA and gives it wirelessly into headphones. So people a little more hearing challenged can catch everything that's going through the PA that way. But if the choir is not going through the PA, then they're not getting it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Now, during COVID, all of my soloists, of course, have to use a microphone. That's the only way my live stream hears them. So they've all got used to it. They've been trained to work with a microphone, whereas before they wouldn't go near it. So that's the one plus there. But I'll have to see about how to pick up the whole choir when the group is singing.
Another thing to consider, which we've had for the last number of years, is a ceiling mic. Because one of the things that you don't get in your live streams generally is, if your congregation is there, is the congregational responses.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a single mic, and it hangs from the ceiling right in the middle, and at least picks up a wide range of, we sort of aimed it where the largest group of people tended to sit. And and then people hear that there are people. Yeah, exactly. We put it at the front to begin with, and there was silence. There's nobody there. So it picks up that. You have to be careful, is because it's unseen. It's very, very small and just a little cable, and people generally don't know, we told them, but they don't know it's there. But it picks up all the conversations before the service starts. So you have to mute it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Beforehand.
Yeah.
Even just our mics at the front, we've had some of those pick up some interesting conversations. Fortunately, everyone's been polite.
Exactly.
I can see where this is going. I can see where, okay, so I've spent a little over $2,000 on just the gear I've had now, just what we're doing with, 5 people in there.
And you're not done yet.
Then we're going to go back into, with choirs, I'm going to run out of channels on the soundboard. I'm going to have to go to them and say, well, now we need to upgrade our soundboard. Now I need 5 more mics, and now I need to do this and that. So it's going to get more challenging. I can just see that.
And it's going to get more challenging based on the other part of our conversation. And that is, as people come back into church, they're going to see less urgency in continuing and growing that online presence, right? And I think that's going to be one of the challenges, is what are our strategies for keeping that in front of us as being an important part of our missional work together now, that we don't let go what we've gained, and in fact continue to grow and build on that. Once the mainstayers of our community life in church return to the pew, how do we keep the momentum in that online mission as well, to provide a presence out there, and how do we monitor that, and how do we measure our connection to a world beyond the normal through that online presence. And I'm really curious about, because we do YouTube, and I see that, at the end of the week, we had 112 people watch the service. I don't know if that's 112 people that, 80 belong to our parish, and there's a group beyond the parish that watched it as well, or whether some parishioners watched it twice. How do you measure that? How do you see where you're making an impact on the online presence? And that's one of the things I've just been completely oblivious to. I mean, we're doing it, and we're largely started doing it for our own parishioners, but I know because of emails and things that other people have found their way to us, but I don't know whether they're still there now, or when we open up again, whether they'll go back to their own church that they've already been a part of. So that's the kind of stuff that those conversations I'd like to have to help energize us moving forward, because I do think this is important for us. I think that there's a lot of future options and possible opportunities and possibilities online. And I think that a lot of people, I was going to say my age and younger, but way younger than my age and younger, this is where they live a lot of the time. And if they're going to connect at all with the church, it'll often be through this medium. So how do we maintain that for, maybe it's our seeker ministry, because I suspect that would be more the kind of thing that it is. And is that just putting on a Sunday morning service and putting it out there? Or is there something else we shouldn't be doing that would be more seeker oriented, youth oriented, whatever it may be? And I think those are the conversations that we're now in a position to start to have, because we've been so burdened with just the immediate need of COVID and our own parishioners and stuff. But I would hate to think that all the effort we put in the last 14 months here would just dissipate because we happen to be back in the building. And
Blair, you've been running that for, as you say, 11 years now, right? I mean, how did you grow that online audience?
Well, and so I'll say a couple of things to start with. So the first thing I think you'll need to be prepared for is it's going to be really hard to keep energy up around that, because our views are exponentially larger now than they were for the first 9 years. It was done for shut-ins and for nursing homes, and there was zero interest in the rest of the world in watching most of those services. So it becomes harder to get budgets and harder to get things when you're saying, well, we have 7 people watching it on a regular basis, as opposed to 50 or 80 or 100, right? The other side is your analytics. So if you're running through YouTube, then there's a whole, in your channel, there's an analytics section, and it will answer all those questions you had, Michael, around how many people are watching, where they're coming from, whether they're repeat people, how they got to your site, and also how long they watched. And you might want to be prepared for a little sadness on that.
Yeah. But I've found that analytics section, but I've never been able to figure out how to dig deeper into the information. Like I see reaction and engagement and all those things. And I'm pleased to say that at least they stay for 15 minutes of the 35-minute service, but on average. But I guess it's to try and dig into the next level to see if there are, like, I still don't know at reading the analytics, whether I'm just looking at my own parishioners, or whether I'm looking at a group beyond my own parishioners plus, X number of people. So that's the part that I'm not sure of.
Just from the analytics, I don't think it would tell you.
No, it's harder to find that kind of information.
It tells you. Sorry, what's up, Blair?
I'm just saying it is harder to find that kind of information, because unless they supply it, they don't have to do that. There's been some talk on some of the sort of chat groups about this kind of work, about how to re-engage or how to engage people and to get that sort of information from them. But really, it's just a request, and it often ends up having to be somebody who's going to man the comment section live while you're doing things and be out there asking. The other part of it is too is that YouTube is not a youth-driven. This makes me feel so sad, but YouTube is not a youth-driven format.
No.
It is a my age-driven format. My kids are on many different streaming services, and they use very different formats, which you can tie in, but it is, again, it's a lot of extra work and a lot
more
of
stuff to get into. Twitch seems to be pretty popular.
It's the gaming one, and it's very popular with the gaming community.
Right.
And it's a whole other can of worms.
Thing. Yeah. Just so.
Anyways, but keep it. I guess the first question you asked, Mark, is how to keep it going. And that is to keep it in front of people, because when they're not at home watching, which up until recently that's been the bulk of our congregation, it's a hidden ministry. They never see it. They don't hear about it. So we made sure, like, we have a running thing of. We use Easy Worship. It's like PowerPoint, the announcements that run on the screen before the service. And we just make sure that there's always a slide up there that is reminding people that we have these services online and that you can pick them up on our YouTube channel. And we make sure that they're brought up at parish council meetings and different times, because without that, we notice there's not the interest in putting the effort and the money into running a quality program, because they just don't see it.
I'll just say that it was not a surprise, as it turns out, but pleasing anyway. We were doing live stream in the fall, and then we got shut down again at Christmas, and then we were back again in February. And so that period from February to Easter was interesting because that's a period of time where there are any number of reasons why just in the normal course of things, people wouldn't be able to get to church. I didn't have people traveling internationally this year, at least not, actually I shouldn't say that, not so much as compared with other years. But just, somebody has a cold, the weather's crappy and they don't want to drive, all those things that interfere with church attendance in the wintertime, of course, all occurred February, March. And because we were in the pattern of offering the live stream, particularly then the pre-recorded stuff when we were shut down, any number of people who, if they couldn't get to church, would have just, well, I can't get to church. Suddenly this option was available to them and absolutely embraced it. And we're an old crowd, or older crowd anyway. So at least to start, there is substantial interest and enthusiasm in my gang to say, let's keep going with this. If only because it means any given Sunday when someone is sick or away or crappy weather or whatever, they can still come to church. And there's a perception of value for that I'm pleased with. I wouldn't necessarily have counted on it, but it's there.
We need to stop calling it a shut-in ministry.
Say that again?
We need to stop calling it a shut-in ministry because it was first.
Okay.
And we realized that people who were going on vacation didn't, because a lot of people don't understand the technology, they didn't tune in because they thought it might take away something from. So once we got that out there, then our vacationing people often would at least do a little bit of tuning in. And I think that will stay because people have gotten used to it now. Yeah. Another option is also we track all our visitors. And of course, we're getting a lot less visitors during COVID than we have been, but we still are. And 85% of our visitors that we've gotten during COVID all watched our services online before they came, as well as other multiple churches as their church shopping.
Yeah.
They came to our congregation.
Yeah.
It's good to know.
And I think that's going to happen a lot more too.
I found too, through the month of April, and May, from the week that we started that third lockdown, YouTube told me that we started to average 2 to 4 new viewers per week. So new, unique individual viewers each week, 2 to 4 extra ones. Yeah. And yet when I look at that same month, the number of total views was about the same.
So you were losing people too.
So I wondered if what's happening here is that maybe some of our own parishioners are giving up on it. Now, there were also a number of technical glitches during that month where one of our live streams actually failed completely, just didn't happen, and another of them failed for almost everyone that tried to view it, but some people did manage to view it. And that's the one that we really cannot, still to this day, cannot figure out what happened then. But so you can get puzzling, somehow encouraging things from YouTube analytics that at the same time tell you things that make you scratch your head and wonder what's going on.
Or if you just straight up believe them, make you sad. Yeah.
So is this platform as missional, or is it more pastoral in it? Because you say that, Blair, and I realize that my kids are doing all sorts of different things. They're using WhatsApp and Snapchat and other ways of connecting to one another than YouTube. Although my youngest son loves to watch YouTube videos of guys that build cars and stuff like that. So there is a platform in YouTube that appeals to him. I guess for me, the question is there something else or another platform or another approach that we can take that is specific to kind of that seeker reality and different from not just putting a Sunday morning service out there that probably will only appeal to people that it already appeals to. So I'm just wondering, what are kind of the platforms that, or other ways we could get out there that we haven't explored yet? Because aside from, I've used Discord, Ring Central, I've used Zoom, I have used Teams, I've used YouTube, and it seems like we've taken a tour through about a half dozen, options, and GoToMeeting, which none of us liked, and none of us. I hated that, but anyway, because it just so many people could not access it for a whole bunch of different reasons. The amount of bandwidth that used up. So if you're out in the country, you just didn't even bother going to a GoToMeeting meeting because they just couldn't handle the signal and stuff. So, and Zoom seems to have been the most popular one, but there's Google Hangouts. There's so many. So what else is out there that we haven't, that I'm not aware of, where we might put ourselves that might have some kind of effect of connection to a broader community than what we're doing already? So do you have any ideas around that, Blair, from your thoughts?
A couple to start with. I think part of it is it's overwhelming because there's so many options. And if you try to do all of them, you just do them all badly.
Yep.
So it's often better to pick one, two to focus on. And the advantage of YouTube is that you can link it with a whole bunch of other things.
Right.
So our webpage is the main way that most people find our YouTube channel and how they find our live stream service. And most of our new unique views come through our website. So if you search on the website comes up first, long before a YouTube channel for us, because we don't get that many views. And then that leads us to the streaming. Then we make sure that on our broadcasts, so the youth that we've had visit during COVID, they don't come alone. They come because their parents made them. And their parents saw they watched the church first, the YouTube channel version. So we make sure that just somehow, even when things aren't happening, that your advertisements and your announcements at the beginning are still mentioning the things your church does. Right. So one family that they came without their kids, but they came because they knew that we had things for their kids when we started back again, because the scrolling announcements told them. So it's to keep up with that. Another big thing is not many of the churches have a trailer for their YouTube channel, which is a separate thing that a lot of younger ones seem to watch just on YouTube, which is the trailers. They come up independently, and the algorithms for YouTube will shunt them to people if they have something that connects it. And you can do multiple ones that talk about the different parts of so you can have one for your Sunday service, but you can have something for your youth group as well. And if they're involved in it and they make a channel trailer and a little video, then the fastest way it gets spread is because they tell their friends.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's all of that. Forgive me, guys. I got another commitment I got to move to, but thank you. This has been good.
Thanks, Charles. Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah.
So Blair, what are some of the other things that your YouTube links to then?
So for us, the main one is just that it has a standalone feature. So we have our own channel, and that it just gets advertised as its own channel. And the main one is our website, so that it gets linked in multiple places in really easy to see spots is the main thing. So right on the homepage, there should be something that links to it.
Okay.
Because the people don't dive that deep into websites unless they've become interested. So the things you want have to be right up the front. And then even simple as all our promotional material. So when we put an ad in the paper, which we don't do regularly, but we do at special occasions, and the print stuff that we hand out to, we have in the hall, so when the groups come by, when we do have people in the building, all of that has the website, YouTube channel, everything listed.
Okay.
But you can link it to other things. We just haven't done it because we've concentrated on the website.
Yep.
Blair, there's something, I haven't looked into this yet for our parish, but isn't there something where in YouTube, where if you have X number of subscribers, you can rename it, your channel, so you can name it anything you want, as opposed to like XYs that, you get some weird URL. Do you?
Oh, I see. Yeah. Like if you, I think so. Yes. You get a whole lot of benefits the more subscribers you have. Same with Facebook. The more you have, the more, because you don't even get analytics with Facebook until you get 100 subscribers, and then you get proper analytics.
Yeah.
So YouTube, I don't know what the threshold is, but you can get more where you get to rename it. At least ours is searchable by our name. So if you just type in the church name, the channel comes up. So we don't actually put that little weird code in.
Oh yeah.
Our promotional print material. We just put the name of the church, and our church is quite unique. So we have to keep the Cataraqui in it, or it goes to Australia. And we have, oddly enough, a number of Australian viewers because they've contacted in under Christchurch, Kingston, their main city, and part of my evening prayer group on Facebook is a very faithful Australian contingent, which is
isn't that funny?
Quite hilarious. But I've had one of them phoned in just to talk, so I've had an actual phone conversation with these people from around the world, which was really interesting.
There's a motto or a rule in marketing that says if you're trying to reach everybody, you're reaching nobody. So just in terms of what you said, Blair, about pick a channel and grow it, put the energy into it to grow that thing. Sometimes I think people, there's a danger of you're trying to reach everybody with what you're trying to do, no matter what it is, all at once, and sometimes it's too diffusing.
And we've all seen how much energy and time it takes to do all of this.
Yeah.
And every system is a new learning curve and another added to the workload, which is going to be an issue, I think, when we do look at continuing on. I'm really blessed at Christchurch in that it is very, very little of it is up to me. I go and do my thing at the altar, and all the rest of it is done by a volunteer team, except for Sunday school. Now I do all the Sunday school videos on YouTube, and I post my own YouTube videos, but the service stuff is all done for me.
Right.
But already I'm looking at, when we get back to full on in-person services and all the groups are running and all the meetings are running, I will not have the time to do daily evening prayer and Sunday school videos and all these other YouTube videos that I've been doing by myself. And I suspect that might be an issue for a lot of people.
You don't want to sleep.
No, so you don't have kind of a communications person that kind of looks after all that kind of online presence as kind of a director or somebody that kind of looks over the whole thing, do you?
We do. It's content. So I've got a person who looks after all of that, and there's a whole committee. Actually, there's 4 of them, and they're often coming up with new ideas and running with them. They're great.
Right.
But when it came to Sunday, I'll take Sunday school as an option. So none of our Sunday school teachers would have anything to do with being on camera.
Okay.
And so I picked up Sunday school, and I produce a weekly video for Sunday school. So it goes through the same YouTube channel. It gets done through the same committee that does it, but I have to generate the content. Same with evening prayer. I'm generating all the content. And that's the part that takes the time and is going to be difficult to sustain.
Yeah.
Ian, where do you see it going once people are back in the parish? And
I'm a bit concerned because I get some feedback from parishioners that although many of them know that we're not planning to drop live streaming, but to continue it, but many of them, their initial feeling was, oh, you really don't think we're going to continue that after people are back in church, do you?
Right.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But one of the few ideas that I've had that actually might be a good one in this regards is in terms of reach out. Even a year ago, there was a young boy, about 14 years old, who came to our Christmas Eve service because his granny was bringing him. and his parents as well. And he wanted to tell a story about a camel. So I had him tell a story about a camel. And it was all funny and good and so on. They didn't come back for, but then COVID hit in February. And I said to his granny, I said, I wonder if Elias, that boy, would want to be involved in learning about this online streaming technology and being part of our technical support team, because many young people are interested in that sort of thing. Yep. And he said, yes, my hunch was right in that regard. Now, it turned out that practically that wasn't able to work out very well, because if he was there as well, that would mean our recording team would go higher than 5. But once we were back to allowing in-person services, I said, I think I want to integrate Elias into this because he was still keen. And see, he can register that as volunteer hours for his school, because he's volunteering at a community organization. And they need to do that. Young people have to have those volunteer hours as a school requirement. But they get to choose where they spend those volunteer hours. And why not spend it at a church that's doing live streaming? It's one of the few things that our church does that a person that age might find the slightest bit interesting if they hadn't been dragged out to church before. So that's one direction I'm thinking of going, is get some young people involved in this technical support team, because we're very thin on the ground. I have one tech support person, and if he's not available, as he will not be this Sunday, that means all of our technology is running kind of. I set the computer up at the beginning, and I hope and I get everything moving in the right direction, and all that's needed then is for somebody to press the button on the computer keyboard to advance the PowerPoint slides. So we have, when our tech support guy isn't there, we have our organist slips over into his chair, and when she's not playing organ for the hymns, she presses the PowerPoint button. But ideally, what we would like to have is some young people involved in doing this, and that could be one way of, because the best thing is when you give a young person something to do in the service, then they know that they are important. For decades, centuries even, we brought young people into our services by having them be an altar boy or an altar girl, a server. And that was about the extent of, except for Anglican youth groups like AYPA, which used to exist. That was about it for Anglican integration of young people. But I see that same kind of principle involved when it comes to live streaming, because it requires actually more than one person. Once you need someone to press the button for the PowerPoint slides to advance them. You need somebody, and once you get into multiple cameras, then you need somebody to aim and steer the camera the direction you want it, unless you've got one of those PTZ cameras but even if you've got a PTZ camera, the person who's running the live stream has to use some kind of toggle to make that camera turn around, right? And point it and zoom it. So you still need more than one person to control so Blair, you were saying you have 4 people?
This is a team. So we have it down. This is a very interesting point, actually. With the more complicated the system you get, it has 2 things. So 1, you need more people, but 2, you can actually, you can sort of, lack of a better word, dumb down the system automatically to make it easier. So our system can be run with 1 operator at the back, but they are crazy busy. So the standard is 2 operators all the time, one that runs Easy Worship, one that runs the live broadcast. But for a while, we had a little time period during one of the lockdowns where the people who were coming in and doing that lived out of the city, so they weren't supposed to travel in. And we can run our entire system just from the altar. So we use the Easy Worship, and it has the newest version of it. Of course, the most expensive, but it has a system that you can remotely advance the slides from an iPad or a version of that. So I use that on the altar, on the missile stand, and I can change all the slides, and I can move the service, and we can get the PTZ cameras that just before the service begins, you static, zoom them in where you want them, and the system runs without an operator. And live streams to YouTube. So there are ways of actually, and I would suggest it if you have a system, because the biggest hole I think in our system over the whole 11 years we've been doing it is when an operator can't come or just forgets to come.
Yeah.
And it's really nice to be able to come back and just go, even as parish priest, in 5 minutes I can set the system to run automatically and do it myself.
Yeah. My son is he's 14. Like your friend Ian there, and so I brought him in as a live stream tech. So he helps me out, and now I'm training up 2 other people at the parish as well, because part of initially I was a bit reluctant because I thought, well, then I can't go anywhere, right? We can't go out of town. I can't, because someone's got to be able to run this thing. So, and I'm kind of hoping, like my son will start high school in the fall, and he will use this towards volunteer hours. I'm hoping that perhaps with new friends that he engages with, that I might be able to grow that pool of young people as tech people. It's like this is kind of AV class now. And that's where I hope that can go. If I could get a good little roster of teenagers or youth to come in and help me run this and look after it, that would be great, And the side thing is I'm keeping him. I feel like we're losing him in terms of his connection with the faith. So at least he's there every Sunday. He may not be, paying attention 100%, but at least he's there. And he's getting exposed to the gospel and continued exposed to church, which I'm hoping is just the side benefit of him sitting there in front of a computer at church, is that he's absorbing this.
Yep.
I think it's
your learning curve with your younger operators too is usually less. Mm-hmm. So we have a whole system of we've got 5 adult volunteers who rotate running the 2 programs. And we have a system where we teach them we meet 2 or 3 times beforehand and really teach the whole thing. And then we had one Sunday where no one could come. And so one of our 18-year-olds was around, and I said, if I gave you a little thing, could you operate this? And so he came back, and it took him about 5 minutes. And he had the entire system, and I tried to show him something that was wrong. He's like, wouldn't it actually be this way? And he was off to the races, right? So it's really, it's second nature with a lot of them.
Yeah, for sure.
So Ian,
okay, well, that's great.
Do your PowerPoint slides, are they up on the screen and they just appear in the video as you do your live stream, or are they layered into your online processing?
Both. We use OBS most of the time, although sometimes when we're in Tamworth, we just use the Logitech capture software if all we're doing is a recording, if we're not live streaming.
Right.
But when we're live streaming, we use OBS to hook into YouTube, our YouTube channel. And OBS allows you to size and shape a screen for display capture. And display capture, we have the PowerPoint on a second display, a second monitor, and that display also goes out to an external projector. So the computer has 3 outputs. One is HDMI, one is DisplayPort, and the other is VGA.
Right.
And so it allows for output to 3 monitors.
Okay.
And you've got the same PowerPoint slides are being seen by people in the live congregation as are being seen at home. I like to have that square about 1/4 of the full size of the screen, because that means the words are a good enough size for people to read, even if they're looking at it on a small screen like an iPad, or I don't know how many people look at their services on a phone, but most people have something like an iPad or something, some kind of tablet at home.
So what font size would you typically use then in producing 40. The original slide?
40.
Okay.
40 points.
Okay.
I go down to 36 points I make 36 stacks absolute minimum, because smaller than that, the print is going to get, of course, that means you have to spread your scripture readings over about 4 or 5 slides, which means it takes a little longer to set up the PowerPoint slides, but
that's where I have to go next. Is I have to figure out, I have to get that component up and running, just to get, Richard, Richard had been asking me about that. I said, let me work out the other problems, and then we'll bump it up to that next piece.
How do you deal with the text part in your thing, Blair?
So we use Easy Worship instead of PowerPoint, and the same thing. It just there's a program that comes with the Wirecast that will just take from the separate computer. So the Easy Worship computer's on the same network, and we can have anything that's displayed on that screen displayed on our live broadcast. So the same thing as Ian said, you size the box, and then here we can move the box anywhere around the screen. So when I'm preaching, if I wander a bit too much, they can move things around or something.
Yep.
Or with a lot of our music, you can make it the whole screen. So since we don't have a live choir or anything to show, while the music is playing, the words become the entire screen. So it makes it even easier to see. Right. It adds to the service quite a lot when they can follow along with the responses.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's a subscription-based service? Is that right, Blair? Easy Worship, you pay for a subscription?
It is now. Yeah. It used to be a standalone, but now it's gone completely subscription.
Okay.
And Wirecast is the same?
Yes, Wirecast is a subscription service as well. Yeah, the bulk of the cost of the live broadcasts for us, besides obviously equipment, but that's usually a one-time thing, and you don't have to do it for years, is all the between for our Easy Worship and then the Wirecast and then your CCLI license and your broadcast license for your copyright. That's the bulk of the cost of the program.
Yeah. So what's the broadcast? I know about the CCLI license. Where do you get a broadcast license from?
That's part of the CCLI. So CCLI, like if you have a Christian copyright license, you have to buy a separate streaming license. It's another $60 a year if you want to stream your stuff.
And that's picked up. Isn't that picked up automatically? YouTube has kind of a blanket broadcast license, do they not? That as long as you're not doing anything nefarious, that it covers your use of things like your choir badly singing a hymn that
And essentially what it does is it'll flag your video. So our videos are, our services are always flagged for copyright.
Right.
But all that means is if you're not putting ads, which we should be anyways, on our services, there's no problem. But recently, because so many churches are streaming now, one of the things that is happening that is a lot of Christian music is they have the ability, if you use somebody's music and they see it on the video, they can put ads on your service to recoup their costs.
Okay.
And you can't do anything about it. So I did a what do you call it? Station to the Cross video. And I while the prayers are going on, I put music in the background. And some of it was Teze music. And this particular group of Teze musicians, they have an automatic system that scours YouTube for their stuff. And it came up and it said, they're going to put ads on your on your video unless you remove their music. So I had to go back and use somebody else's.
Oh, interesting.
Very infrequently that it's happening, but it's a possibility now, and I assume it'll keep growing a bit more.
Copyright claim on YouTube is something we have about every second week. The copyright claim comes up, which is different from a copyright strike.
Yes.
Right.
We have never had a copyright strike and probably never will. But what I was puzzled recently when we got one, because this copyright claim, and it actually, YouTube stated which hymn it was. And that hymn is over 200 years old. It's been in all the hymn books for 200 years. It's been in the public domain for 200 years. No one can claim, I know in terms of copyright law, at least in North America, no one can claim it, either the person who sings it or the person who claims ownership over it. But YouTube gave me more information this time, said that there are 3 European countries. Germany is one of them, under which there is a company that claims copyright on that hymn. Now, that means that their laws have no effect on us here in Canada, but the fact that somebody could be viewing your service in Germany, and that hymn is under copyright in Germany, means that they can claim ad revenues if we're not claiming any. We're not getting any ad revenues, and we're not monetizing our site because we don't have anywhere near enough subscribers to be able to do that. But it is an issue. But apparently, people who've contacted YouTube about this say, "Don't worry about it. That's not an issue. It's just it doesn't affect you."
It's an anomaly. We've never had any copyright from any of our YouTube stuff that we've done so far, at least not that I'm aware of. We've not been had a strike or a claim of any kind.
We have a blend of contemporary music and traditional music, and most of our claims come on the contemporary music because it's all still under copyright. So even though we have a separate license for that music, we still get those claims. But again, it doesn't make any difference. It just means we can't monetize the channel.
Mm-hmm. Right, which you wouldn't be doing anyway.
We wouldn't do anyways, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow. My head's hurting.
Every time I think we have it figured out, there's a new there's a new thing,
a new twist.
Yeah. It seems to me that the equipment is one thing, but like listening to you about the programs you're using, it seems to me that might be one of the growing edges that we have, is to kind of transition into something slightly different than what we're using and get into that Wirecast. It's a nice idea, but the easy share is it's very seamless, right? In terms of being able to put all that stuff together, and it works really well for that. I remember the last time we did this that you mentioned the easy share then too, and how helpful that's been for you guys as a program. So that may be something we look at here. And I've looked at those BTZ cameras for ages, because ultimately here I would love to be able to set up we have the balcony that comes out, and you could upside down, put cameras in there. They would never be in the way, but they would provide a great view of the front of the church. And then we could move our setup presently is at the front of the church, just because we're running cable for everything. And just right now, it's the only way we've been able to do it. But ultimately what we want to do is to set up the sound booth basically in the balcony. And then if we had wireless cameras, we could put everything up there and get it out of the way, and the operator could sit up there and manage things. So, and like everybody else, we spent a pretty good chunk of change in the past year on all this stuff. But there seems to be still lots of momentum. When we were talking about the conference phone, I didn't have to sell that idea at all. They passed it to get it before I'd even explained it all, so there seems to still be a passion for, and I think whether it was Ian or Charles, that the idea that this will continue to function for us, even for our own members, when people are unable to get to church because of weather or people are away and all that. And I hadn't really thought of trying to point that out to people and hadn't really thought that through myself. But I'm always kind of thinking of the people that aren't here that we're trying to get a hold of. But certainly for our own members, and we have lots of folks now that get online that can't get to church for one reason or another, but they've been part of the services. So even our own community will be greatly served by continuing to do this and trying to improve it. So I think that's an important selling point in this moving forward. Is it's not just for people we don't see or know. It's the very people that we see and are part of our present family that we're still serving and supporting in various ways and circumstances, and not to lose sight of that part of it as well. So I found that comment really, really helpful in terms of kind of moving forward as well. That's been great stuff.
Okay, well, it's just past 3:30 here. I think it's a good time to wrap it up, and lots to think about. You know, it's like, you're right, Michael, in terms of whatever stage you reach on it, there's always another level you can go to.
Yep.
So
and Blair, if you don't mind getting the information of the kind of the equipment programs you're using and share that with Mark, I think there'd be a lot of people to be kind of interested in, because you guys have been into it for so long. It kind of where you're at now is so far beyond where we are presently, that'll be a great way to say, you know, we've gone through this over the last 10 or 12 years. Here's kind of where we're at right now. And that's taken a lot of experimenting and trial and error and all the rest of it to get to here. So it might save some folks some agony, or at least going down rabbit holes that they don't necessarily need to go down because they're looking for something and can't find some direction or advice around that. So
yeah, happy to. I'll sit down with Ray too, just to make sure I get it all right. He'll steer me in the right direction, and I can pass it on. Glad to.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. All right, Blair and Ian and Rob, thanks for joining us today. Joining Michael and I today. It's great. Always great to hear what people are doing and pick up little things, information and ideas around the virtual water cooler here.
Yep.
Well, hopefully we can get together at some point soon in the future too, and sort of keep the conversation rolling.
Thanks, everybody.
Right.
That was great.
Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much. It's been great.
Take it easy. Yep. Be good.
See you later.